Alright, fuckers and fuckheads. This first video this evening, I'm going to debunk several myths about Facebook hiding political pages, be they Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, because I've seen this bullshit being broadcast from both sides. Mostly it's coming from the conservative sides, and I agree the algorithm is a little bit biased, but I also tend to think that you're not watching your pages close enough, and you're tripping the algorithm on accident, or you're allowing it to be tripped on accident. And in some cases, yes, I believe that you're allowing it to be tripped accidentally on purpose, because you're not dealing with human beings. You are dealing with basically something that makes my beastie, which is an artificial intelligence living across several of my machines, look like Mickey Mouse shit. But you know, I'm one guy that's been working on that thing my whole life, and they've got teams of guys that are a shitload better at it than I am working on it, and their heart's in the right place. But you know, you never find the bugs on something like this until you put it under load and it actually gets used. I mean, you can back test up to a point, you can't back test all the way. So believe it or not, I have to take Facebook's side on this, which probably lost half the viewers of this video right there. Because most people refuse to believe that it's really this simple. Alright, number one, when you see all these political pages that are posting, Facebook is blocking our posts from you, you must go up here on our page and under like, highlight, and click show all posts. Well, then you see every damn comment that they've ever put on anything, which is annoying as hell. The real secret to that one is, you know how every couple of weeks Facebook automatically logs you out, or you log in from this machine over here, or, I mean, hell, if you look in my places, I log in through Venice and Inglewood, Florida, every single time. I don't care if I'm in bumfucked Egypt. I do it via RDP, which is Remote Desktop Protocol. Yet somehow Facebook is able to detect my actual location, because I do that on a network separate from my own. If it happens that you're logged out and you're logging back in, and you look up where it says sort, it always defaults to top stories. Therein is the real problem. It's not a matter of Facebook is hiding your posts. It's a matter of people's default settings go back to default stories or top stories instead of most recent. Now, top stories generally caches out, and there won't be no more new top stories unless they're smart enough to click Control 5 or Control F5, I'm sorry, and fully refresh the page. And even then, it still takes, yeah, alright, go play in an app or go look at a group and then come back. And it will finally have some shit there. But you know, no matter how long you stay on that section of the page in your feeds, it's always going to be on the top stories. It's not going to be on the most recent. So there's one myth debunked. Actually, that's several myths debunked right there. And be ye Republican or be ye libtard Democrat, I'm Constitutional Party myself, and I have no political pages. I refuse to put one up. I love reading the hell out of y'all shit. I love listening to y'all shit. Because it keeps me apprised of what's really going on in the world, because quite frankly, I live a somewhat, even though I live in town, I live a somewhat isolated life because I have problems with my memory. I can't help it. I remember everything, which really sucks. If you think about it, you'll understand why that really sucks. I may have to be on topic 20 or 30 minutes before things come rushing back into my head, but it always does. And, you know, very often, this gal over here will tell you, you know, we'll get to talking about something, I won't remember shit. 20 minutes later, I can recite it word for word, whether I want to or not, and then I throw it into the conversation. You've seen that, right?
Yeah.
How many times?
What?
And it's not that I don't want to remember it right away, but anyway, I'm straying. I shouldn't do that. I'm sorry. My apologies. Another thing, especially on the conservative sites, the liberals have been attacking the shit out of the conservative sites. And a lot of the conservative threads, you're allowing your pages, I'm sorry, I still call them threads. I call it threads across the board, across the entire damn internet. And I do the same thing with the Shell station up here on the corner. That was a fucking Cenex when I was a little kid and used to come down here. It's still the Cenex when I tell people, hey man, run up to Cenex and grab me a pack of cigarettes. They look at me funny and I have to remember to tell them it's a Shell now. Yeah, it's that Shell on the corner of Crane and 41. So you know, if I use outdated terms, it's not intentional, it's just how my mind works. Going down the list of conservative pages and watching the threads myself, and people like Lori Patriot, the original Uncle Sam's Misguided Children, and a couple of other pages, they can tell you that I have at least typed this out loud, and I've verified it 10 ways to Sunday, even though folks refuse to believe it. When you allow your users on those pages to start arguing with the other side, they have a tendency to cuss or whatever, or do profane shit, and their comments get reported. Well, it's too many of their comments get reported on a post, then your post gets reported. It is not your fault. It is actually a combination of your users and whichever side's trolls are on there, you know, engaging in the arguments. Another trick that I've seen that they've been pulling is, you know how if you've got a post that's like a year or so old, they'll actually scroll back in your page's feed that far if they can, as far as they can, comment on something with something really nasty, and then they'll wait just to see if there's any return comments. Well, meantime, the post is outdated and you don't see it in your management console. Guess what? They got you. And they can do it a bunch of times. You have to, it is your responsibility when managing those type of pages to monitor your traffic. It is not Facebook's responsibility, nor is it their fault that you have not taken that action and maintained your page in a proper fashion. It is not Facebook's fault that you have not, I'm not saying ban all these users. I'm saying, and I'm not saying argue with them either. I'm saying discourage the arguments. Encourage free speech. For God's sakes, please do not discourage free speech in any way, shape, form, or fashion. But do your best to not get people riled and started into arguments. Logical debate is one thing, but arguments is a completely different thing. And a lot of times when you guys word your posts, and I don't care which side you're on, you word it in such a way that it infuriates people and they're ready for an argument. They're seeking it. right after they've read your header before they've ever read the article. And a lot of times I realize it's a legitimate mistake because there's a lot of things which I can type out which sound cold and hostile, yet in reality are intended in no such way. Think about that for a second. You have to be really careful with what you're doing when you're dealing with a high traffic page like that. And the only page that I've got up other than my personal page right now is my shops page. Also, I would suggest a lot of you familiarize yourself with Facebook's terms of service, or end user license agreement if you prefer to call it that. Because a lot of you, by insulting and slamming Facebook repeatedly, guess what? You screwed yourself. Don't just read their terms of service and user license agreement, whichever you prefer to call it. Study it. Don't make false statements that Facebook is masking your page or blocking or hiding your posts. We'll get to blocking in a minute. Let's leave that out of there. Let's leave it at hiding because they are two separate entities. I'm sorry about that. When in fact it's your own fault. Now, as far as blocking goes, it is indeed an algorithm. And yes, indeed, I have sandboxed it on other accounts. And I do know how to trip that algorithm on purpose and get blocked. And I can tell you that those of you who are repeatedly posting, say, more than 10 to 12 posts an hour, you're begging for it. It's essentially like if I was to take my search engine submitter script and submit the same site to the search engines a million times, that's called link spamming. Well, you guys are doing the same thing essentially yes, I know I'm stretching. I'm trying to oversimplify so that the average person can understand. It's really hard for me. It's a lot easier, believe me, to explain a motorcycle to you or an engine than it is to explain anything else. And it's really hard for me to explain this in terms that the average person is going to understand. But as far as the blocking, it's usually, and I got that keyword in there, usually due to overposting. I have seen a lot of the liberal ones, not so much on the conservative ones, where they complained, oh, this was blocked, when in reality the original poster that you shared from had their settings set to where only their friends could see it, and then you tried to post it and, oh yeah, this content cannot be seen. Well, instead of looking at why that happened, you jumped the gun and said, oh, they blocked it! It's Facebook's fault! When it's indeed not. Now, if you're one of these people that right-clicks, save as, or copies and pastes, I would suggest that you look at the original post and make sure that it's not copyrighted. Because I have set traps on a couple of pages on the internet, which are mine. They're hosted on my own machines, and allowed my copyrighted images to be leached, even though I embedded in the tags the copyright information, that it was my creation. Facebook believes in copyright. Much as you don't want to believe that, but they do believe in copyrights, and they will pull those pictures down. Now, I did that batch of pictures just for that test. In fact, I set those servers up just for that test, for no other purpose. and they have since been taken down, and they had nothing to do with Facebook. Like I say, they were hosted on my own machines. And in fact, I went to great lengths to make this look like you had gotten them from a normal website, even though it was, I'm going to use one way the fuck outdated, something on the order of redneckboating.com. And that's not just for clarification, that's, or illustration, that's because I don't like laying all my cards on the table. I don't want you to know all of my tricks. But I have taken the time to study this relatively in depth. So let's see, I've covered the blocking, I've covered the sort order, I've covered the user problem. What am I missing here?
You're gonna talk about taking posts down? Censorship?
I've already got that in there.
Offensive stuff.
All the offensive stuff, that's kind of covered by the Facebook Terms of Service. And I mean, now they also, aside from their Terms of Service, they do have a set of community guidelines, or just plain guidelines if you prefer. I would suggest reading both in depth if you're going to manage a high traffic page like that. Oh, now I remember. The high traffic pages, when you are whining publicly about, oh, Facebook wants us to pay this. Okay, I think half of you are scammers just looking for free money. Because on my company page and on pages that I've had in the past, I also get that same console. And what that is merely an offer from Facebook to promote it for you. You do not have to pay them one penny. See, they're making money every time somebody looks at your page anyway, so they're more than glad to have a high traffic page. You better believe that. But when you publicly, I want to say blaspheme so bad. I just did, fuck it. We're going to throw that in. When you publicly blaspheme Facebook, I hope Zuckerberg gets a laugh out of that, repeatedly saying that Facebook is demanding that you pay them to promote a post or to promote your page, you're telling an outright lie, because they're not demanding it. It's an option. I personally use an aftermarket, legitimate websites search engine site submitter. I also use an RSS feed submitter and a couple of other tools. I'm not going to tip my promotion hands at all, not publicly. If you know me personally, or if I like what you're doing and I'm willing to help you, that is my choice to do so. I do not have to. And you're not likely to get my assistance other than this video explaining, hey, look, you guys are creating a bunch of myths, or believing or buying into and then following along with myths. That's my 2 cents on the subject right there. Hey, so I hope I was helpful to some of y'all. I truly do. That was my intent. I didn't mean to get loud, but I kind of did, because there's 2 ways to make people learn something. One is to make them laugh. The other is to piss them off. Y'all people running these political pages seem to be the kind that like to get pissed off. So I hope I've done my job. We'll holler at y'all fuckers and fuckettes later.